I am here today to talk about how to write so people give a damn. Because if they don't give a damn, you can't get them to listen or read. You can't get them to consider what you're saying. You definitely can't get them to believe. And most importantly, you can never get them to act. And if you want people to act, and if you're in co-working or building a business or teaching people, then you definitely need to get people to do all these things. You need to know how to write so people give a damn. Thank you again, Adam, for that introduction. I don't want to reintroduce myself. I'm actually going to do something super lame, which is read an email that I actually received this morning from a reader of mine. I feel like that's a better credential than me telling you about my accomplishments or whatever. This person wrote in, I wanted to take a minute to just say thank you. The last few emails I've read from you have been so great. I mean, really, really good. Your writing is so personable. Somehow you managed to provide meaningful, actionable content while being funny, clever, sarcastic, and completely authentic. Sidebar, I did not pay this person. You're probably having way more of an impact than you will ever know, so thank you, and please keep up the fabulous work. That, my friends, is the kind of thing that you can get from people if you follow the principles that you're about to learn. If you learn how to write so people actually give a damn. But more often what we end up doing is writing so that people want to damn us or damn you. I feel like we've all had this experience where we've received an email, not like the one I just read to you, but more like the one that's on the screen right now. I received this a couple years ago, and coincidentally, it's from a company in Philadelphia. And they wrote, "Hi, Amy, how are you? I came across your resume today while doing a bit of research and wanted to reach out about a potential opportunity with our company, Monotate. We are currently looking to identify talented, passionate software engineers internally here, and having reviewed your experience and background, blah, 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 blah. I thought you would potentially be a good fit. I would love to set up a call to discuss your background further and discuss what we're all about here at Monotate, yada, yada, yada." So this is your basic cold email. I allegedly saw your resume, which by the way was a lie. And if you look at it, you're like, well, this kind of email makes people mad, right? I cannot tell you how often I hear about other people in my industry complaining about these really rude recruiter emails. But why would anyone be angry when they received an email potentially offering them a job? Well, I've started to highlight the reasons that these make people mad. Look at all these sentences that I've made red. They have something really important in common, aside from being full of lies. 70% of the words in this email are in sentences that begin with I. Most of them explicitly, and a couple are implied. This person is all about themselves. This email is all about them. And the only thing that's about me is my name and a fake question, how are you? I would like to defer to Dale Carnegie on this particular type of email. He wrote in his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, which is a great book. In response to receiving a letter quite like this one from someone else, he wrote, you desire, you unmitigated ass. I'm not interested in what you desire or what Mussolini desires or what Bing Crosby desires. Let me tell you that once and for all, I'm interested in what I desire, and you haven't said a word about that yet in this absurd letter of yours. And that's why letters like that make people really mad, which is the opposite of giving a damn. But most often when we write things, blog posts, signage in the co-working space, essays, talks, podcasts, the most common response from the listener, reader, or observer is not hatred or damning, but yawn, which is just as deadly, if not as shiny as hatred. So if you want to improve your writing, your communication, how do you do it? How do you get people to give a damn? There's a lot of advice out there about writing that says you should add more emotion or tell stories or put in some charts and graphs, maybe make a better case for who you are and why they should trust you. And I'm going to debunk these. There are really only two models for writing. I know that people think that there's storytelling and there's factual research and then there's reporting and all. But really if you're not writing a news report of literally what happened and nothing else, you have two choices. You can choose to express yourself with expression, or you can choose to persuade. Now, expression is all about what's inside you. What do you want to say? What do you need from the interaction? What are you hoping people will do? It's I focused, in other words, infuriating. Persuasion is about the reader. You're trying to get someone to do something by focusing on them. Expression is talking at someone, and persuasion is speaking with someone. So when you use the persuasion model of writing, you are actually getting the reader to participate. Persuasion is participation. Persuasion is not a word we use a lot these days. It tends to have a sort of negative connotation, but it shouldn't. The art of persuasion goes back to 400 BC when Aristotle wrote The Art of Rhetoric. Or it's a book, or a scroll, in which he lays out the ways that you persuade an audience to first listen and then think about what you're saying and then believe it and then act. And he writes that in making a speech, one must study 3 points. First, the means of producing persuasion. Second, the language. And third, the proper arrangement of the various parts of the speech. Now, the 3 tools that Aristotle writes about to persuade are ethos, logos, and pathos. Ethos are an appeal to moral authority. Not authority like the Pope, but the morals that rest inside each one of us, the person who is listening or reading what you're writing. Logos is an appeal to logic, fact, research. And pathos, I got that backwards. Logos is appeal to authority. Pathos is an appeal to the emotion. This is really complicated, and unless you're a communications major, you probably aren't going to be able to go out and say, all right, I'm going to use ethos in this piece of writing. So again, I'm going to defer to Dale Carnegie on how to persuade people without reading ancient Greek. Later on in the same book, and I really love this book, and I quote it a lot, it has a bad reputation, completely undeservedly. He writes, I go fishing up in Maine every summer. Personally, I am very fond of strawberries and cream, but I find that for some strange reason, fish prefer worms. So when I go fishing, I don't think about what I want. I think about what they want. I don't bait the hook with strawberries and cream. Rather, I dangle a worm or a grasshopper in front of the fish and say, wouldn't you like to have that? Or to put it another way, when you want to persuade someone, even to open the thing that you've written with your headline, you want to bait the hook to suit the fish. And what hooks people more than anything else? Themselves. So when you want to appeal to someone, when you want them to pay attention enough to read the headline, and then the first sentence, and the second sentence, the third sentence, and so on and so forth, which is the basis of persuasion. You want to talk about their goals, or rather yours, your goals, your life, your worries, your feelings, your experiences, annoyances, things you care about, things you know and like, your people, your needs, and your pain. The best bait of all is to make the reader, listener, or observer feel like you're talking to them, that you have their needs in mind, you're focusing on them, you understand where they are, and you value them. One of the best people at doing this in the entire world has been Ron Popeil. Bet you didn't see this coming. I don't know if you've ever seen a Ron Popeil infomercial. The chances are that you did. He has sold more goods than literally anyone else on the planet. And there's an excellent book about how he's done that by a man named Remy Sharp. Remy writes that Ron takes notice of life's small annoyances and minor inconveniences, the sort that you didn't even know that you had until you flipped the channel one night and landed on one of his programs. And then he heads home to his garage and figures out a solution. So Ron is what Remy is saying is that Ron is actually able to provide such attention to a person that he spots problems that they don't even realize they experience. And then he persuades them that their problems that they've never articulated are important. People feel so valued and understood by Ron's salesmanship that they can't help but open their wallets. Now, I know a lot of people say that infomercials are full of crap. Well, they do sell things that don't work. But if the products worked, we wouldn't look down on them. Infomercials are truly the most persuasive medium of our time. But you aren't probably selling a pocket fisherman. You want people to put their dishes away or join your co-working space or come to your art show. You don't need to pander if you want to persuade people to do those things, if you want to persuade them to even read what you're saying about those things. You just need to meet people where they are, whether or not they know it, and then make room for them in what you're creating, writing, saying, doing, and draw them in. So you start with them. You start with a focus on them. And then you're like, let's slide over here and talk about this thing, whatever that thing may be. Or you start with them as a specific case and you enlarge the story after they've bought into it. Like, you have this economic problem. Well, look at this entire country. This is an extremely effective persuasive technique. Because remember, you have to persuade them with every line of what you're doing. Another common model for persuasion is actually the dramatic story arc. You've probably heard the writer's journey, the hero's journey, not the writer's journey. That's a book. The hero's journey, it begins with a problem. At some point, there's a turn where there's some hope, and then there's ups and downs, and eventually there's a climax where the solution is found or achieved, and then from there on, the story just sort of gently unspools until the end. The difference between problem, hope, and solution creates dramatic tension. But movies, which are, of course, one of the most popular dramatic tension type situations that we experience every day, and fiction, they're not actually about you. You don't go to a movie theater and the main character is you. And the same thing is true of your writing. You don't have to, this reader doesn't have to be the star of the movie. It doesn't have to be about them exactly, but about something that they care about. And when you're watching a movie, the something that they care about is initially the characters. Whether or not you identify with the characters as being people just like you, the storyteller does something to make you care about them. And that builds emotional buy-in, which then you can use to give people the experiences they crave in a movie, like shock and fear. In a movie, you are not the star. The viewer isn't the star. The viewer's feelings are the star. People go to movies to feel a range of feelings, to be led on an adventure, even though they're not actually inserting themselves into the movie. And you can use the same technique in your writing. You don't have to literally write about the reader, because if you want 800 people to read your piece, for example, you can't write about all 800 of them. So I want to show you now some examples of how to use this when you're writing copy, for example. You want someone to take some small action. Remember that persuasion is participation. This tweet showed up in my timeline the other day, promoted by Twitter. It wants me to do something. Twitter says, we've selected a group of users for a brief survey. Answer a few quick questions. Rude, right? Why is it rude? It's just like that email I got from Monotate. We've selected a group of users, thanks Twitter, answer a few quick questions. They don't even say please. So naturally, this is definitely me wanting to damn them. How could you make this better in the context of 140 characters? It's really not that hard. The first thing you could do is literally take what I said and turn it around. Help us make Twitter better. The you is implied. It doesn't matter if it's me or you, which country you're in, who you are. Twitter is appealing to your help if they would write it this way. That's naturally interesting because everyone likes to be asked for help because it's flattering. Also, it implies that Twitter is really interested in hearing what you have to say. You, little old you, one of what, 1 billion users? I don't know. Twitter could also say, we would love to hear your opinion on X. If they wanted to go more direct to appeal to a certain type of audience, certain type of user, they could get more explicit. They're like, hey, you're a power user. Can we ask you a favor? We really need your input as a power user. You're talking about who they are, how they use the service. You're making it more specific to them. Any of these would work better. Even if they just added please to the first version, it would work better. Another example that we all hear a lot. We apologize for any inconvenience. Why is this so rage-producing? In other words, the opposite of persuasion. It's because we apologize always means not really. No one actually is apologizing. If a company apologizes, we all know that there's no one in there who's actually doing the apologizing. And any inconvenience says that they don't actually believe anything happened, or they refuse to admit that anything happened. They're literally taking, instead of bringing you in, making space for you, they're pushing you away. They're like, oh, you have some sort of feelings or something, and I don't want to know. I'm just going to look away and say any inconvenience. So this is the opposite of persuasion. To make it persuasive, to diffuse those feelings, to get the customer to buy into their solution, to feel good about the transaction, good about the resolution, all they have to do is literally apologize. I'm sorry for the trouble it caused you. Thank you for your patience, or we really appreciate that you're giving us a second chance. This has made room for the person, brought them in, instead of building a wall and rejecting them. But so often when we go to write something like, please put your dishes in the sink, it comes off as asshole-ish because we haven't made room for the reader's desires, needs, or problems. So back to the monotate email as an example of what not to do. There's no room for the reader in this email. It is literally a vomiting of desire from the writer. And if you sit down to write an emotional story or an appeal, it's really tempting to just vomit out your feelings or your story. And there's nothing wrong with including feelings or story in a piece of writing. But if that's all you do, you end up with something that on the face of it is more serious or interesting or important than an email like this, but still has no room for the reader. And that's why so many personal appeals and stories and signs asking people to do stuff fail, because someone's like, oh, there's no room for me, and they just walk away. So the very bottom line, if you want to write so people give a damn, you have to make room for the reader, suck them in. Always answer the question, what's in it for me? So what, if your reader asks, you need to deliver an answer to this. Why should I care? You need to deliver an answer for this. And most importantly, ideally, you should present it up front so they never have the time to even question. You should lead with whatever will draw them in. Which, by the way, this whole talk has been an example of. So this talk started with what you wanted to do. And I don't know you personally, but I'm going to assume, since you're here, that you have a desire to get people to listen to what you have to say, to consider your points, to possibly believe in your cause, and most importantly, to act, even if it literally just means returning the coffee cups to the dishwasher rather than the sink. You also have a desire not to be like that giant jerk who wrote that monotate email, I'm assuming. Bad email, so bad. You've probably received an email like this in your professional life. If you haven't received it specifically from a recruiter, I guarantee you that you've received some kind of email that was just this vomiting of desire that has nothing to do with you, that left you feeling enraged or icky. This is something that we all share and experience, that we all know. And you're probably like me, like everyone else, concerned that the writing you create or the signs or the arguments you make lead people to be so bored that they just can't care. You probably aren't aware of what Aristotle's writings include, although you may be interested. But you've certainly heard of Ron Popeil, if you're an American at least. And you've probably seen the movie Get Out. And if you haven't seen it, you've probably heard about it. So I've included a bunch of things that you want and that you're likely to be familiar with. Also things that you don't want or don't know and are likely to cause you to go like, huh, what? And pay attention. And I've also finally included a bunch of misconceptions that we've all heard. If you go out and look how to improve your writing, you were gonna come across these bits of advice, and they're not going to really tell you how it works. They'll be like, tell a story, but they won't tell you what kind of story or how the story will actually create a change, because that's a lot of work to figure that out. So I started with you and your wants and your negative wants, the things you don't want, and brought you along a learning journey to the thing, which is the persuasion arc. And that is how you write so people give a damn. Bye.